Thank you very much, Nick, and congratulations to you and your team for putting on another great conference. And 20 years of conferences here in the Gold Coast really is outstanding, and it's a special opportunity for us to talk directly to you guys and for you guys to come up to the booth and ask us questions and maybe sift through and ask the questions that you want to ask. So I do ask you all, if you are interested in our story in Brazil and the Jaguar nickel sulfide project, please come up to us in the booth and we'll be happy to go in a bit more detail. So please read the normal disclaimers on the website. So in November of last year, Centaurus put out a resource of 109 million tonnes of 0.87% nickel for 950,000 tonnes of contained nickel metal in sulfide. And that's one of the biggest nickel sulfide deposits in the world today. To put that in perspective, there's only 30 deposits on the planet that are bigger than that, and only 10 of them have a grade of equal to or greater than 0.87 in their resource. And of those 10, 7 are mines. So they're operating mines like Kambalda, like Voisey's Bay, like Sudbury. The 3 that are undeveloped are Kabanga in Tanzania, where BHP is heavily invested, and 2 deposits in the western part of Russia that have been locked up for the last 10 or 15 years. So if you believe in the thematic of battery metals and you want nickel exposure, then the Jaguar nickel sulfide deposit is one of the best deposits that you can invest in. We're situated in Brazil, and I'll go through why we think that's a great place to operate a nickel mine. We're in the process of de-risking the project, so we'll deliver a DFS at the end of this year, and that will deliver a project of around 20,000 tonnes of contained nickel metal over at least 20 years from open pit mining. Now the size of the resource says that we'll deliver more than that underneath that pit, and I'll get to that at the end of the presentation. So a quick corporate snapshot. The share price is down around 75 cents, so that's a discount of about 70 cents from this time last year, so a very good time to buy. 70% of those shares are held by the top 20. And they've been there for a long time, and that's made up of institutional investors from North America, guys who understand how to operate in South America, like Sprott and Dundee, and also some very savvy nickel investors like Hermanus, who's on the register. Please take your time to look at some of the brokerage coverage, which give you a bit of an idea of the insight into the project. So why do we think that Brazil is a great place to build a nickel sulfide mine? Well, we've been there since 2009, and we've been operating, developing, exploring and constructing mines during that time, we as a company and also as individuals. The process and the roadmap to mining is very transparent and well understood. We have lodged the mining lease that was lodged in last year, but we have reapplied that once we realised after the November resource that the project has grown in scale. We have done the same for the IARIMA, which is the environmental licence, and we expect that those 2 licences will be delivered to us in the second half of this year. Importantly, last year Jaguar was put on the Strategic Minerals Policy, which is a department in the Brazilian government that helps guide critical projects like Jaguar through the licensing process. So the Brazilian government has recognised that Jaguar is a critical project for the battery metal space. Once in operation, we're going to be working in a favourable tax system. So we've got about 15% of effective tax in the first 10 years, and that's to try and bring more investment into the north of Brazil where we operate. Importantly, royalties from this that go to the government, 65% of royalties paid go back to the municipality in which we work. So we don't only give them jobs directly and indirectly, there's also funds going into their coffers so they get better education, better logistics, better health. But the main reason we like operating in Brazil is the fact that it really is a renewable powerhouse. So at the moment, Brazil runs national grid about 80% renewable energy. By the time we're in operation, we expect that to be around 100%. And that will allow us to deliver nickel sulfide units to the battery maker at a very low cost, both in terms of dollars and carbon dioxide consumption. So we operate in the Carajás, in the western portion of the Carajás, over here. Now, for those who don't know the Carajás or understand the Carajás, it's like rolling the Pilbara iron ore assets into the Gawler-Creighton's IOCG assets in one small space. So we've got the world's biggest iron ore mine in S11D, which is about 120 k's to our east, and we have the world's second biggest IOCG copper gold mine in Salobo, which is to the north. So Valley have been operating here since the 70s, which means they've spent a lot of time investing in rail, road, power and infrastructure. So this is a really outstanding mining jurisdiction. You can see we're located about 30 kilometres to the north of Tucumán and Orlando do Norte. There's about 70,000 people in those towns, and they've been servicing Valley's ferronickel mine for the last 15 years. So that means there's people ready to work, they understand mining, they're second or third generation miners, and they're keen to get working with us to get this project into production. So in 2021, we completed a scoping study. You can see it has some very good economics. That scoping study was done at $7.50 nickel price. Today's nickel price is hovering around $10. It's been as close to $15 in the last 4 or 5 months. At a $10 price, we're looking at $2 billion IRR or $2 billion NPV, and that'll throw off an EBITDA per annum of around $450 to $500 million. So a very robust project. We can't control the nickel price, which this project will be in operation at that time, but what we can control are the inputs that are going into the DFS. The resource growth, we've already grown the resource 65% bigger than the resource that underpinned the scoping study. So that's more nickel metal. We've optimised the mining schedule, and we've also identified a couple of byproducts in the pilot test work that will add to the revenue stream. So those byproducts are going to help bring down the cost per tonne of nickel unit delivered, but just as importantly again, the cost to the environment for these projects is important, as the battery maker wants to see low carbon dioxide nickel equivalent tonnes delivered to him. So we're at the right end of the curve. In the grey, you'll see all the laterite deposits that are relying on coal-fired power and a lot of power to produce their nickel. In the yellow, you're looking at the nickel sulphide deposit. What sets Jaguar apart, and in the top 3% of carbon dioxide per tonne of nickel equivalent delivered, is that it is high grade, it is near surface, and again, it is using hydroelectricity, and will be around 100% renewables at time of production. So the DFS is well underway with the completion of the pilot test, and one of the first things we're seeing in the mining optimisations and the mine pit design is that previously there was a number of multiple pits here, and they're now coalescing. So those pits are that's about 3.5 kilometre long strike and about 1.5 kilometre wide distance. So that pit is as big as the Kalgoorlie super pit. So we're talking about bulk tonnes at surface coming out, producing 20,000 tonnes of nickel in sulphate for at least 20 years. We successfully completed the pilot plant test work last month, and that produced the data that the engineers can go away and finalise our DFS with. We got very good recoveries of 75% from ore to product, which is an outstanding result, and we've identified these additional byproduct cobalt and zinc hydroxides that can get an additional revenue stream for the DFS. Importantly, that material goes off to the potential off-takers, and hopefully within the second half of this year we'll have more clarity on that off-take, which is a very important piece. But it's really about the deposit. This is a world-class deposit. 950,000 tonnes of contained nickel metal. I'll repeat it again. So that means there is only 30 deposits in the world bigger than that, and there's only 10 that have of a higher grade. And of those 10, 7 are already operating mines and have been for the last 50 years. So this is the best nickel sulphide development proposition in the world today. Importantly, when you look at that, you've got 500,000 tonnes of contained nickel within 200 metres of surface, and there's a high-grade core which gives flexibility to the mining engineers at the start of operation. So when you're going through payback and trying to pay down your debt, you can chase the grade and get robust cash flows, which is very important. But we're not satisfied. We think this thing can grow, and you may ask, why do you think it can grow? Well, it's important to demonstrate how big this thing can get in case someone is taking a look at you. The resource is at 1 million tonnes. We can think it can get well beyond that. And the main reason we do is because we use a very common and well understood exploration technique, which is borehole EM. So not every time we drill a hole, but on specific holes, we case the holes, we put a probe down those holes that lights up the surrounding area and identifies any conductive plates. And anything with mineralisation like this, which is semi-massive and massive sulphide, will light up a great plate. So that really helps the geologist target the next deepest hole. So that hole there is on one of our deepest holes in Jaguar South, at 600 metres depth, returned 20 metres at about 4% nickel. So what we're going to do now, we're going to take a new rig that just got on site, we're going to drill 14 to 1600 metre drill holes, and we're going to take our probe and put it down there and see if we can generate more plates to try and extend that down dip extension of the Jaguar South deposit, to see if we can get double the down dip extension. And we think we can do this because the mineralisation style in the Carajás is known to be very deep plumbing. So you can see over here you have the world-class copper gold Salobo mine. They're drilling to 1800 metres deep and getting semi-massive and massive sulphides. So we don't see any reason geologically that we can't repeat this. Yesterday we announced a new discovery. So we put out a release that announced a discovery at Twister, which is up in the northeastern part of our tenements, about 5 kilometres away from the ROM pad that is planned for the Jaguar deposit. Now it's about 900 metres of strike length, and we've got holes that are 12 to 14 metres at 1 to 1.4% nickel. This is a great discovery. We will work to get this discovery across into the next resource upgrade, which will be towards the end of this year, and that will eventually contribute to more near-surface mineralisation going into the mill. There is no infrastructure planned over or near that discovery, so we can certainly turn it into a pit. But I think just as importantly, it shows that making new discoveries hasn't finished at Jaguar. Most nickel deposits are part of camps, and we can see no reason that Jaguar is not part of a big nickel sulphide camp. So we put a nickel sulphide processing plant in this region, and the new discoveries are made. The natural path for those resources will be to come to the Jaguar nickel sulphide refinery. So we have a lot of news flow in the next 6 months. We're going to deliver the mining and the environmental licences by the end of this year. We'll also deliver the DFS. There's going to be clarity on the offtake, and they're 4 very important parts of getting to a final investment decision, which will be made in the middle of next year. The construction phase is about 2 years, and we expect to be in production by around the first quarter of 2027. So I've got 1 minute and 45 seconds to tell you one more time how big this thing is. It is, again, there's only 3 undeveloped deposits bigger than the Jaguar nickel sulphide deposit. So if you believe in the battery thematic, every lithium-ion battery needs nickel. If you want to find something that has bulk tonnage and a high grade of nickel, then the Jaguar nickel sulphide deposit is the one to invest in. And if you would have any other questions, I please ask you to come by our booth, which is in the room out the back, and say good day. Thank you very much.